Alright class, this is section 2.4, measures of central tendency. So this is one of those unique examples. What I want to do is look back at again the definition of mean and median, but also evaluate and consider this particular problem has an outlier. So I want to discuss when outliers become an issue and how to interpret, or what would be the best decision to figure out what would be the center number. So a lot of times in cases, and I don't want to just like spoiler alert, but the mean can cause some issues. The mean can be mean to itself in that regard if we have any outliers. So here in this case it says, suppose that in a small town of 50 people, one earns $5 million per year and the other 49 earn 30,000, which is a better measure of center, end quotes there, the mean or the median. So let's go and take this time here to evaluate both of those. So imagine this list. If I wrote this all out, we have, a small town, and I would use capital letter N is equal to 50. Rather than smaller case n, we're treating this as if this is all the people that living in this town, and that's the population size. So whenever you see it, very rare, population size. I shouldn't say it's very rare, but if you look at some of the theory and math and statistics books and things like that, they use it off interchangeably, and uppercase n and lowercase n, dealing with, I think, for like the central limit theorem, if it's, the issues with or without replacement comes into a factor with that. So those are things to be aware of, and that's where they interchange the capital letter N with a lowercase, but it doesn't even really matter in that way. What you want to hear is just look at, the 5 million wage earner, I guess, per year. They have probably a lot of real estate, and just probably a lot of real estate that they have, and they're collecting rent and things like that, and more power to them. Maybe this person rents to the other 49, I don't know. But then you want to look here to the other 30,000 wage earners. So I just kind of put a semicolon there. And we're just collecting all these $30,000 wage earners here, down to the very end. You get a bunch of them. And maybe one more here. Okay, so we have one person, I'll just say with a frequency of 1, and the others accumulate here, have that ... frequency of 49. And obviously the point of all this is that the 5 million wage earner per year exceeds that of the others that earn the 30,000. This definitely, well, not the number 1, but this value, the 5 million, is the outlier. So outlier is a value identified in the set that stands out from everybody else. We'll have a more defined way of defining what an outlier is when we get into section 2.6. And basically that's the interquartile range minus 1.5 times the interquartile range subtracted from the first quartile, vice versa, added to the third quartile. So that's a more precise way of picking up those outliers, and more specifically they're identified in box plots. But here I think it stands out pretty obvious that the 5 million is definitely an outlier without any doubt, without having any discrepancies there. So, but one thing here, in the problem it says, what is the mean? And so in that case, the mean would be mu, and we would take and add those up, all those numbers. So I'm going to take my 5 million, and then you go plus 30,000, which of course you have a lot of 30,000s, down to the last one. And you want to add those all up, and of course divide here by 50. And an easy way to do that is to again recognize that as frequency goes, there's only one 5 million, and the others are 49 of those 30 30,000. So if you went ahead and make this probably a little bit easier, 1 times 5 million plus 49 times the 30,000, and then divide by 50. That is the definition of multiplication, is repetitive addition, or is a fundamental way to define multiplication, rather from, a model perspective though. I didn't know this till later. I was like, oh, that is obviously true. If you have 2 plus 2 plus 2, that's the same thing as 2 times 3, so which is 6. And this will bypass all that and get cut to the chase here. But regardless, the sum of all those, we want to add those all up. So if I go ahead and look at what the total would be, we have a huge 6,470,000 for the grand total. But what we want to do is take that total and again divide that by, let me grab it over here, divide that by the 50, and then you get here for the mean, $129,400. You can verify that that is the middle number for our little mini, town here, village here. But let's go back up to the top of this and think about a little bit, what is the median? So that's the first one we did. We figured out what the mean was, but how about the median? You have to sort those numbers. And you've got 1 million, there are 5 million on one side, and the rest are all 30,000s. Then obviously in the middle, and if I take in that perspective, let me come down here for the median, that I said to take the number of values, which you have is 50, and you want to divide that by 2. And you come at an even 25. But it's not just stopped there. You want the 25th value and the one above it. And we'll again go into more details of that in 2.6. 25th and the 26th number. You want to average both those numbers together. So add both of these together and divide by 2. The average of those in that location is the median. And of course those two numbers are both $30,000 because we've bypassed the 5 million. So in other words, if you average 30,000 with itself, you get the same number out. 30,000 plus 30,000 is 60,000. 60,000 divided by 2 is 30,000. So the average of the middle two still is $30,000. And then I can come back over here up the top and say that the comparison of these two numbers, we know that for the mean is the 129,400, and looking at the median, we have a completely different number, 30,000. But then of these two numbers, which one, so which is the center of the salary, those salary wages, or the wages for that small town? Question. Let's look at the first one here and look at the 129,400. Is that a true reflection of the middle? Well, it is the middle. We didn't do anything wrong. All our math is correct. But of course, how far does that lean from a bunch of our $30,000 wages earners? It's almost like it's just right there. If you were to mark it on our list that's ordered, it's still kind of closer on a scale to 30,000, but it's pushed away from that group. I mean, that 30,000, 129,000 is like 4 times plus the amount of those wage earners. So how can I say that? If I were to report, this is the average amount for this town, would that even make any sense? Well, let's look at the median. Let me slide right next door. And this, if I said the middle number or the median or that center was 30,000, you're like, okay, then half the people make above that and half the other half make below that. Even the same thing too. Think about that way in perspective of center. As that center identifies the middle, that therefore half make above and the other half below. Do half of the people make above 30,000? Do the other half make below it? Well, they don't make above or below it. They're both the same, except for one individual. But how about going back over here to the 129,400? Do half make above that? No. Only one does. So both of these, but what would you reflect? I mean, here for the center, you would want to say probably, I would lean towards the median. And this is why. If I were to do a report of this, town, how much on typically, maybe think about that way, even just the center, but what's typical is the mean. So maybe we should write that over here. Not just for what is the center, but what is a typical wage? What is a typical wage? Question mark. I would say for this town, like 30,000 is typical. It kind of more answers that in terms of the mode. So we have, those four measures: mid-range, mode, median, mean. What accurately describes this town as the middle? I would say the 30,000 does. But what offset it? Could I report the 129,400? You could. And you would think like that, well, half make above, half make below, but it's like, that's not true. It's not. Because it doesn't accurately, because these statistics, they need to say something about the population. And if they're biased statistics, then it's not really to be used. How many people do that? All the time, because they're trying to show their biasness. Now we have these things with articles or newspaper. I don't know if we have newspaper anymore, but we have blogs and YouTube and the narratives, all these new different, news affiliates or local affiliates and news companies. I mean, they have narratives. And so if the information presented doesn't fit their narrative, they're not going to use it. So if you want to bash this town and say that, oh, gosh, these people, these $30,000 wage earners, they're greedy. They want more money because the mean is 120,400. I mean, what's their problem? They didn't get that other slice of the pie, but then that's not accurately reporting what's happening. So the center and how we report that is critical. But one thing to take away here is that obviously this is the point, is, let me write this at the top, that the mean, this is, let's just make this all for the rest of this in chapter 2. The mean variance we're going to cover in 2.5, and also the standard deviation and the standard deviation. All of those are affected by outliers. I'm going to have a question like this in the test. This is your bonus for watching this video down to the very end of it. And there you go. So which measure of center is most affected by outliers? The mean. With a close second would be the mid-range. But the mode and the median aren't as affected by outliers. And so you do that, you use that when it's necessary to do that and identify those. We're going to talk about variance and standard deviation more particularly because variance and standard deviation are a function of the mean. So if it affects the mean, then obviously the variance and standard deviation are also affected by outliers too. Now, can we just throw out the outlier and just say get rid of them, just toss them out on the island and say just go somewhere else? Well, I guess we could do that, but ethically, we cannot get rid of outliers. If you really took your sample correctly in an unbiased nature, then it has to stay part of that set. So I realize people try to figure out a way to get rid of them, and unless you can prove otherwise, you got to keep those outliers, because it could suggest a different part of your population that you're not considering that you look more into. But anyway, this will conclude it here for this one, talking about outliers and its effect on mean and median.